Now, when Nigeria first achieved independence in 1960, it didn't have an air force. It was not until 4 years later that the country's strength in the skies would be inaugurated. 60 years on, there's now what you might call a thriving Air Force community in Nigeria, advancing tactics, enhancing its operations to counter asymmetrical threats across the country, and daily trying to improve its response to conflicts in Nigeria and beyond. It's an evolving role, they say, especially when it comes to counterinsurgency efforts. But those efforts have sometimes ended in tragedy, what's been termed bombing mishaps, with more than 400 civilians killed in the last 7 years alone in accidental strikes. So, as the Nigerian Air Force prepares to mark 60 years in the skies, what does the future look like going forward? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the spokesperson of the Nigerian Air Force, Air Vice Marshal Edward Gabkwet. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you very much, Charles.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
When does it actually hit the 60-year mark?
18th of April.
Okay, it's already hit it.
Yes, but
you're marking it this month.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
So
okay.
Still falls within the same month.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So just reflect for us briefly on the changes that have taken place in the Nigerian Air Force since it came into existence in 1964.
Yeah, it's been 60 years of remarkable changes. When you look at how it started, right from when the Act of Parliament actually established it in 1964, to when the German Air Force Assistant Group came in to assist us with some training aircraft. And then they had to leave quickly after that when the Civil War set in. So 3 years, barely 3 years after its formation, the Air Force was faced with taking part in the Civil War and did very well as part of the Nigerian military apparatus in the Civil War. Soon after the Civil War, transformation efforts, establishment, expansion, and all of that. Of course, in the 80s, we had what we call the golden years of Nigerian Air Force, where I think the civilian rule then really invested a lot in the service. But then, of course, the military rule came on, and then, of course, we had the downturn. Sanctions came into play. Sourcing for spare parts became a problem. But soon after that, again, we revived. The civil rule came on board again, and of course, this is where we are.
So you're Force, on the up now.
Seriously, we're in a very good place today. We have a balanced Air Force that can prove its worth anywhere in this world.
And you talked about the golden period of the 1980s. Yeah. That included that war in Liberia, didn't
absolutely.
it? And
absolutely.
Sierra Leone and all the rest of it.
Yes.
And you guys were at the heart of that conflict.
True. It's something we are very proud of. And of course, in recent times, we were in the Gambia, if you recall, when the civil rule there.
Buzzing the capital.
Of course, it's really helped at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so that is what the Air Force is, projecting air power, serving as a cohesive force, where we have tyrants trying not to hand over to a democratically elected government. So it's a very, very useful tool in international relations. Yes.
And what are the big challenges that you face today, 60 years on?
Yeah, the challenges we face are not different from any Air Force. We are unfortunately fighting a war within our country against our own people, unfortunately. So we are faced with an insurgency that is, let me say, inbuilt, and it sometimes becomes very, very difficult when you are trying to tackle some of these criminals and all of that. We are making efforts in terms of R&D to make sure that we source for our space in-house, and there's a lot of progress in that. You can see that the Nigerian Air Force anniversary for this 60th anniversary, a major milestone. We are partnering, going out of what we used to do, partnering with private entities to see how we can fund this particular 60 years, and bringing in partners, aviation-related partners, to exhibit their products during this particular 60-year anniversary. If you go to the International Conference Center, you see over 300 people from out of this country, over 30 exhibitors, and over 40 different air forces taking part in this particular.
And what are they exhibiting?
A lot of products that has to do with the Air Force, aviation, all of that. A lot of drones there, a lot of machines that, of course, can help build on our aviation industry, both military and civil aviation industry. So,
but of course, it's one thing to hold an exhibition, quite another to actually buy what they put there. Are you getting the kind of investment you need to enhance? You made a critical point about national security. Are you getting that investment to enhance national security in the country?
We are making efforts to bring partners that can invest in this country. We are trying to create.
Yeah, but people aren't going to invest in your Air Force, are they?
Of course, you can't invest in a military service.
But you're saying you're bringing partners. That's what I don't understand. I mean,
partners in the sense that we're bringing people that other people in the aviation industry can patronize.
Right.
For about 300 investors to come into this country within a week, I'm sure even this
they're
hotel.
Trying to sell you things.
Hold on, sir.
So it's not an
even
investment.
For the fact that they're here, they are paying for hotels, they are paying for accommodation, they're paying for feeding and all of that. So it's left for us to see how we can explore these kind of opportunities.
Right.
Yes.
And I read somewhere that you're expecting 48 new aircraft.
And
how
more.
much of a difference is that going to make to your operational capacity?
A lot. You have more aircraft in numbers, you have more ground to cover. And of course, that also translates to firepower. Don't underestimate the fact that this is a very large country with so much ungovernable spaces. So if you have more aircraft out there in the skies, that means you have wider reach, and of course, you'll be able to checkmate the activities of criminals. Yeah.
I'd hate to be on the receiving end of your aircraft.
Yes, they're machines.
But I mean, the point, of course, is that the more aircraft you have, the more people worry about accidental mishaps.
Unfortunately, these are things that sometimes it's difficult to control because of the kind of war we're fighting. It's not something we really like talking about or we're proud about. And like I've kept on saying, there is no air force or military in the world that will intentionally harm or kill its own citizens. It doesn't happen that way. Mistakes happen. But look at the last 1 year. Have you heard of any accidental strike in the last 1 year? That means
whoop-de-doo.
No, the fact is that the efforts being put in place by the current Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Hassan Bala Abubakar, is working. You just have to find a way to enhance your safety.
Right.
And you have to put on measures that will help develop that safety ethics in your personnel. Well, so everybody is careful right now. And look, sometimes you see a target and you are aware that there are collaterals around those targets. You just have to look forward to another day. So,
but what was responsible for those accidental airstrikes? And does that form part of your reflection as you turn 60? Accidental
airstrikes unfortunately come with the territory when you are a military service, especially when an Air Force and especially when you are fighting an insurgency. We're not the first. The almighty American Air Force have had its own share.
Yeah, but you don't want to say that to the people you've just killed, their relatives.
Of course. Yeah. We don't want to say that, but we want you to...
So that's why we're asking you what's responsible for your own mistakes, not that of the Americans.
What is responsible for collateral damages by the Nigerian Air Force or any other Air Force in the world is the type of warfare you're fighting.
Right.
You're fighting an insurgent that mixes around with locals. So sometimes it becomes very difficult to separate. So why are we investing into precision weapons? The precision-guided weapons, to a large extent, try to pick on particular types of targets. So you put those kind of investments on ground, then you'll be able to minimize, not eliminate, minimize to a large extent, those kind of collateral damages. And that's what we're doing.
Right. So until you get that new equipment, we can expect people to keep dying in accidental mishaps.
Actually, Charles, I didn't expect we would be talking about, I thought we were talking about our 60th anniversary.
But that's part of, we're talking about how the ups and downs.
Charles, let me assure you, a lot of measures have been put in place, especially under this current Chief of Air Staff. And I can tell you that in the last 1 year that he has been at the helms of affairs, we have not had any damage or any collateral damage.
And what about financial compensation, livelihood assistance? Has that been paid to the victims of the families by the Air Force or the government?
I can talk to you about what we found on ground when we came on board. When we came on board last year, sometime June last year, Air Marshal found on his table this complaint about a strike that happened last year, January, in Nasarawa State. Worried by the complaints he got, he set up a committee to review that particular strike, look at the footages and see where things might have gone wrong. He did that, and after that investigation came out, we found out that really, actually, some people might have been killed accidentally. And what did he do after that? He went to Nasarawa State, met with the governor of Nasarawa State, met with the emir of Nasarawa State, who was able to gather the victims and their families there, reached out to them and apologized, admitted and apologized. That has never happened in this country.
Yeah, but
And
were they
very
paid
commendable.
compensation?
We are working with the Nasarawa State government, not just compensation, identify areas that we can, you know, explore to ameliorate some of the problems they are facing.
Well, that's
and
good.
That's ongoing. We just received a letter from Nasarawa State informing us of areas that they feel that we can really come in and see how we can work with the victims.
Well, that's very good because, I mean, it's very important to see the Air Force taking responsibility.
That's why I've told you we are learning, we are changing, and we have a chief of air staff that listens.
Right.
You know, and he really wants to make amends.
But you
Look,
do know that in the past, I mean, the Air Force has been roundly criticized for failing to publicly acknowledge these accidents.
Yeah. So that's, you see, sometimes these things can be very difficult. That's why I said it is complicated when you're fighting an enemy that easily mixes around with the civilian populace. It's not as if he's having a mark on his face for you to identify him. So these, you know, challenges are there, but we continue to learn from our mistakes, and we continue to push forward.
And beyond those rather sad incidents, how important would you say the Air Force has been in battling the threat of violent criminals like bandits, you know, these gangs, extremist organizations, Boko Haram, ISWAP, and so on, in Nigeria?
Look, Charles, I think every Nigerian knows that the Nigerian Air Force remains the key enabler to the current ongoing fight against all forms of criminality in this country. And that's the truth. We don't just fly aircrafts and bomb. We also have ISIS in the sky, which we use to identify some of these targets, and we work together with the Nigerian Army and other services to make sure that we checkmate the activities. Now, obviously, there are frustrations here and there. Probably you hit them 10 times, they hit you once, and it becomes a big deal. Understandable. But I want to assure Nigerians that these situations are going to come to an end very, very soon. We shouldn't despair. We should continue to support the armed forces in whatever condition we find ourselves. You saw what happened at Vanex, you know, and I'm very, very happy with the way a lot of Nigerians have come out to condemn the act of those civilians. You know, rounding up soldiers, 2 or 3 soldiers, and beating them up. It must stop. We must find a way to support members of our armed forces, not to ridicule them like that.
Absolutely.
In the public, you know.
And do you think that you're living up to your mandate of protecting and safeguarding the sovereignty and territorial integrity of this country?
We are, Charles, we are. We are.
I mean, it's not your will, but do you have the capacity to do that?
Of course we do. Of course we do. Why are we the 3rd largest air force in Africa?
Are you the 3rd?
Yes, we are.
Because I mean, I was seeing something.
It depends on the source.
Well, I mean, I saw something that said you were the 9th.
No,
not the
absolutely
3rd.
not.
So how do
today
you
in
measure
Africa,
it?
there are a lot of ways.
Yeah, but how do you measure it? That's made you come to the conclusion that you're the 3rd.
You look at the strength. I mean, the number of your weapons, but most importantly, you look at the experience you have, the experience we've gathered in the last 10 years with regards to air operations, air warfare. Please tell me which African country has that experience.
Yeah, but I don't understand how you can measure that experience when you haven't got the equipment to show the...
Of course we do.
No, but what I'm saying is
that
according to the assessments that was done, in terms of equipment, you're 9th in Africa.
No, we're not. maybe you're checking the wrong source. I can tell you that today we're between third and fourth, and by next year we are tentatively going to be third most strongest air force in Africa. And the reason is simple. Apart from the Super Tucanos and all these other aircraft that we've received, we're expecting another 48, 24 from Leonardo in Italy. We're expecting 12 helicopters, the AH-1 Zulu from the US, and another 12 Trekker helicopters, attack helicopters from Italy as well. And of course, we have 4 other attack helicopters that are coming in from Turkey to meet up with the other 2 that came in February. So we're building up. Tell me how many African countries are buying 48 aircraft today? Tell me.
Well, I mean, obviously Egypt is at the top of the pecking order.
Fine, you can compare Egypt, but of course you have to look.
You've got Ethiopia, you've got Tunisia.
Find out what they have. What experience? Well, I'm not here to to criticize any country, but I'm telling you that the experience we have fighting air warfare is not something you just buy off the shelf.
So are you able to give us a sense of how many aircraft you have at the moment? And by aircraft, I mean, ranging from fighters, bombers, sort of transport planes, helicopters, that
Well,
sort of
I can tell you that we are at a serviceability status of over 75%. That's what I can tell you. And that's a lot of aircraft. That is the reason why we are all over the country, from the northeast to the northwest, to the south, and to the southeast. I'm sure you've been reading about our reports of what we are doing in the southern part of this country against economic saboteurs. In the northwest, in Niger State, in Kaduna State, you don't just use 10 aircraft to cover this country like that. So a lot of efforts are on the way all over the country to checkmate the activities of this country. Look, we might not appreciate this, but to be honest with you, if not for the efforts of the armed forces, I'm sure that the level of insecurity we're facing in this country would have been more. So
I think a lot of people would agree with that.
Yeah, that's why we keep on emphasizing anytime we have the opportunity, this country belongs to all of us. We must do less of criticizing our armed forces and do more of appreciating them. Appreciate us for what we are doing.
Oh, we appreciate you, but we still have to assess what you're doing.
There's no problem with that. Yes, but it's important we point that out.
Right.
Yes.
So in terms of your fight against criminality, insurgency, all of that, which part of the country are you having the biggest sort of challenge?
Well, I would say we are challenged in any way in any part of the country. The problems are almost similar. All of the challenges we are facing are daunting, but they are not unsurmountable, and that is a fact. But we are working in such a way that we are being very, very careful. You don't just go about bombing people because you want to clear all of these criminals. You have to be very, very careful. Even our strikes in the Niger Delta, there are things that we are very, very, very meticulous about. You don't just hit every Cotonou boat or by the well there, because you know the implications. Yeah. So everything is carefully done, because we believe that if we don't get you today, we're going to get you tomorrow. And of course, we are working with other air forces in our conjugal borders. The Multinational Joint Task Force, the one that operates out of Nigerian Republic. We're working with them, and we have this agreement to cross into, for instance, the Niger border, and the Nigerian Air Force, for instance, can cross into our borders as long as they are pursuing these terrorists. So these joint efforts are also contributing to our to our advantage and all of that.
Right. We've been talking a lot about the civilians and so on, and obviously that's important, because everybody keeps an eye on what is going on in that respect. But what about the people who are in the Air Force? I mean, what kind of welfare do they get? For example, the pilots, who go on these attacks and so on, there must be some kind of psychological impact, especially if you hit the wrong people. What sort of support network do the pilots have who've been in a war scenario, for example?
Well, the Air Force is heavy on welfare. That's a fact, and it's heavy on the mental health of not just his pilot, everybody, you know. Of course, when you are faced in fighting a war situation, sometimes it can get to you, you know. So our medical team are always on standby, you know. If you go to all of our medical centers, psychologists are there, people are there to always talk to you in case you have some of those challenges. Welfare-wise, morale-wise, there are a lot of things that have been put on ground. We have a new insurance policy right now by the current Chief of Air Staff, whereby, you know, you don't just have to be a pilot to benefit from those kind of insurances. Everybody in the Air Force, once he's found to have had injuries or accidents while in active service, can benefit from such insurances. Post-service housing efforts are also ongoing. Just about 2 or 3 months ago, the Chief of Air Staff acquired about 84 hectares of land in Kaduna State to develop post-service housing for our soldiers. The same thing in Kano, and of course we are negotiating with other state governments to see how we can acquire more lands, because it's not just serving in the Air Force that matters. When you retire, we also want you to be comfortable and happy. Just yesterday, the Chief commissioned a reference hospital at our barracks in Osokoro. If you have time, you come there, I'll show you what you get there. You know, so we are heavy on the welfare of our personnel and their children and their wives even, because we don't abandon anybody. That's why we have what we call the Air Force family. The Nigerian Air Force family goes beyond when you're only in service. Once you're in the Air Force, whether serving or retired, you are a member of the larger Nigerian Air Force family, and we don't forget our own.
Well, that sounds very encouraging. Yeah. Very briefly, because we're almost out of time, look forward for us. What does the future look like? I mean, you're 60 now. Yes. Look forward for us.
We're envisaging an Air Force 60 years from now, or even less. An Air Force that can project air power, not just within the confines of Nigeria alone, but Africa and beyond, you know, to safeguard our national history, our national security, and of course, to protect mankind itself. So we're very hopeful for the future of the Nigerian Air Force. And I think these are more than the golden years of Nigerian Air Force. When I left the Nigerian Defense Academy, we didn't have aircraft to fly. There were no training aircrafts. All of them were grounded. But today, cadets start flying right from their final years in the Nigerian Defense Academy. Just imagine, 22-year-old cadet, already a pilot. By the time he's 24, he's a captain on that aircraft. Most of the pilots flying these aircraft are young boys, trained right from the time they were in NDA. So the Air Force is on the rise. And with new platforms coming, I think it's a good future for our country. And we should be proud of this moment. Every Nigerian should be proud of the 60th anniversary of this service that has continued to project the image of this country and protect its citizens.
Well, congratulations once again, and I'm sure the whole country celebrates with you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Thank you so much.
Air Vice Marshal Edward Gabkwet is the spokesperson of the Nigerian Air Force. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much.